Hi everyone, it's me, Jimmy. I hope you're all doing well today. 2022 has been a total renaissance for Sonic. Sonic Movie 2 dropped in April, which I really loved. I thought it was so much better than the first one, and I really can't wait for the third. Sonic Origins came out in June, and Sonic Prime just came out this month, and it's honestly my favorite non-game Sonic media, second only to the OVA. It's also been a renaissance for my childhood hyperfixation of Sonic as a fan. Complete. It's all I think about, brain rot. I've been reading the IDW comics and collecting a bunch of the figures that came out this year. And most of all, replaying pretty much all of the 3D Sonic games over on my Twitch channel. I'm a full-on iPad kid too now. Apparently, I play Speed Battle all the time. I mostly play Vector and Movie Tales. I'm toxic, but I think we all knew this. Earlier this year, my account got glitched. And I could not log in for like a week. I was devastated, and I went through the trouble of talking to somebody on their support website for like 6 days in a row. I was checking constantly. It was embarrassing. I ended up just making a new account because I was getting impatient of waiting, and I got further in my new one in 3 days than I did on my previous one in 2 months. Which does not sound healthy, actually. Have you heard of this 6-year-old child? He spent $16,000 on Sonic Forces Speed Battle using his mom's iPad. When I first read this article, I felt a change in my spirit. The ape that lives in my brain, my primal urge, thinking to itself, I could buy so many Espio cards with this. Think of all the red rings for your account. I think I just had a booger come out. Don't even get me started on Sonic Speed Simulator on Roblox. I don't want to talk about it. And I have bought Robux. All that to say, Sonic is everywhere right now in my life and the world, like Target. Why does this hat say game over on it? That means you lost. What the fuck? And everything honestly has been feeling like a build-up to Sonic Frontiers, a sort of rebirth for Sonic in a lot of ways. It's the first mainline game since Forces, the console version, which was a rough patch. It was not good. I always have a lot to say about Sonic, but this time it's open world Sonic. It's a whole different ball game, and needless to say, everyone has something to say about it, so why not throw my feelings into the ether of the world? This game is going to be what shapes the next couple years of this franchise, and in a lot of aspects, that's very exciting. I think almost every, actually. There's a lot of stuff too that I think could use some fine-tuning though, and if me talking about them in any shape or form gets me what I want in the next Sonic game, then that's a win in my book. There will be spoilers in this video, just as a warning, but I'll have a timestamp before they start that you can skip ahead and skip them. But this game's story is really good, and I really want to talk about the things I liked in detail. Part 1, shaking up the formula. I was very surprised when we got our first look at the game, and honestly at pretty much every showing of it, and that's still not gone away even after playing. I really just can't believe that open world, of all things, is what they wanted to make for Sonic this time. I was kind of like, you guys haven't really been able to get the closed world stuff, right? And now you want to go open? But for better or worse, Sonic Team rarely does the same thing twice, even the good things. So often they'll be on the right track with something in one game, maybe even a few, and then pivot in some weird gimmick direction and fall off the wagon.
You ain't got to reinvent the wheel is fine, girl.
So they're doing it. Open world Sonic. Open world is not even necessarily the best way to describe this game though, to be fair. It's not even how Sonic Team themselves describe the game. They prefer to use
open zones, platforming game.
And it's certainly more fitting. It's a really great term to use, honestly, because it's not an open world. It's divided into 5 islands that you navigate between through menus. Each island is like a sandbox with doors to cyberspace subworlds. And for the record, I don't think this is a negative in any way. It's a lot like Pokemon Legends Arceus' take on an open world than, say, Breath of the Wild or Genshin Impact, which I just started playing, actually. Beto is everything, queen of no depth perception, invented eye patches, she mothered, I fear. Anyway, this distinction between world and zone is really important to understand going into the game, because if you go into it expecting to be able to run from the first portal to, I don't know, the final boss, you can't. And again, I think this is all fine, because while I do like certain open world games, that's just not what I want from Sonic at all. And I think this is a fine way to dip their toes into another genre without feeling so foreign to what a Sonic game is that it's like, why even put Sonic in this? This isn't Sonic at all. Actually playing around in the open zones itself ranges from really nice to really frustrating. When I was first dropped onto Kronos Island, the first of the Starfall Islands, I really loved exploring it. It's a bit small, but I loved venturing off to collect every collectible possible and really sink my teeth into how Sonic felt to control. I don't think it was just the novelty of the game being brand new and me playing it at midnight right when it came out, the excitement of it all. I really think it's just solid and a good representation of the open zone format. I had a lot of room to run around and explore, but not so much that I felt kind of lost. It was really easy to see the next goalposts the game had for me in the distance and keep me on track while letting me off the leash to just explore and do things my own way. Like, yes, there are objectives and waypoints that tell you like, this is where to go, but in a way, it felt almost like I was discovering them myself. I don't know. It was a very cool feeling. This is also where I was introduced to one of the major changes to the Sonic franchise that Frontiers brings, and that's combat. 3D Sonic games, for the most part, have relied on the homing attack as Sonic's primary and almost only way of engaging with enemies, especially bosses. They almost feel like waiting games through dialogue and animations to get your one chance to hit X and do any sort of damage at all. Some games introduced health bars to common enemies in an effort to add challenge, but instead it just prolonged the inevitable and was very monotonous. In Sonic Frontiers though, Sonic has a variety of different attacks tied to every goddamn button on your controller. Sonic's abilities are unlocked through a skill tree that you progress in by collecting experience gems from fighting enemies. At first I was definitely relying on the X button a ton, doing the generic homing attack in and do some punches and kicks. But very quickly, I had a handful of different abilities I could use to change up the monotony. I've seen some reviews online and people on Twitter saying the combat is kind of shallow, but it's actually the perfect amount of depth that I was hoping for. I can appreciate the depth of something like the Werehog from Sonic Unleashed having what felt like thousands of different button inputs to unlock and learn, but for me personally, I think a handful of easy to remember inputs that I can use and still do meaningful damage is more than enough for a Sonic game in my opinion. Keep it mindless, like the fighting is not the focus here, it's the platforming. Sonic isn't about going fast all the time, shockingly enough, but I never want to be spending more than a minute dealing with a single enemy. It slows things down way too much. I also just end up button mashing anyway when games have a laundry list of combos to memorize, so I personally just don't care. The common enemies definitely take a few hits to kill early on in the game, but as you level up Sonic's attack and defense, they're much easier to sweep through. It's very satisfying to get to the point where you can just enemy's dead. But I would prefer going forward if only major boss fights and mini bosses like the ninja character, for example, who, by the way, has no fucking right to be this snatched, okay? No organs, just skinny, are the only ones that have any sort of health bar. Otherwise, it makes things too much of a stop and go, especially with how many enemies Sonic games tend to throw at you. Eventually, their gimmicks get old, like, oh, cool, I have to circle around this guy to get his shield to pop up, but then there's 5 of them. It's just too much. I just did not find it fun after a while. That being said, the variety of Sonic's moves and the ways he fights everything in this game was very cool. Every attack feels really good to pull off, and they perfectly translated the flair and creativity I'd seen him previously only use in cutscenes in past games, Sonic X, or the live-action movies. Also, real quick, why is this boss called Caterpillar? That's not a fucking caterpillar, that is a hermit crab. I'm so unreasonably upset about this. I'm sorry. But like, I had to point it out. The next island is Ares Island. It's a desert, and it's where things start to get a little bit more restrictive and confusing to navigate. Honestly, all of the Starfall Islands eventually become more like archipelagos that block progression until you reach certain story requirements, and then you get from each one by riding on rails or hitting the right springs. So not only is it like hard to tell where you're gonna go next, there's also no mini-map, and the map itself is almost completely useless in my opinion. Instead of filling out the map by collecting Chaos Emeralds or finding cyberspace gates, things you would consider to be monuments or checkpoints, you fill it in by completing really repetitive puzzles in the overworld. And the amount of the map that gets revealed varies in usefulness too, and it's always in this really blocky glitch style that's really hard to look at. Like sometimes I would complete a puzzle and then it would just reveal that there's nothing. Like it's just a big empty space of like bottomless pit ocean between islands. Like this is not helpful. This did nothing for me. I'm just so confused as to why they chose to not just use the Chaos Emeralds, because they're already a measure of your progress in each island's story. The whole point is to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds from each island, and you'd think that doing more of that would show more of the area. Something that also made it very easy for me to get lost was that everything looks and feels very the same everywhere. And because of the uselessness of the map, I found myself missing a few cyberspace portals here and there, as well as opportunities to give Sonic's friends memory tokens to get cutscenes. I only found out on the final island from someone in my stream chat that several islands have a Big the Cat fishing portal. I hadn't seen one since the very first island in the game, and I thought I had looked everywhere. I really don't like the feeling of missing out on content, especially the story parts, and this game's story is so good that it like really made me feel so stressed that I was missing out on something. But the game makes it really difficult to know if you're actually missing something. A lot of the time too, the game threw me into a 2D side-scrolling perspective, which only made it even more difficult to really tell where I was going, because all of a sudden the camera's locked, so I have no idea if I'm going towards the destination I want to get to or if it's going to pull me 55 miles to the right. Visually, the Starfall Islands lack any sort of identity or memorable landmarks. Like, you could take Sonic out of this frame and tell me it was something like Death Stranding, and I would believe you. Realistic environments are not even a complete deterrent for me in Sonic games either. Sonic Unleashed is one of my favorite Sonic games, and that takes a more realistic approach to its art style as well, but with Frontiers, there's a huge lack of color or any Sonicness at all. No loop-de-loops or any sign of life anywhere, which is sort of explained through the story, not to get too ahead of myself, but I still think it's okay to say it's unappealing, even if there is a canon reason behind the choice. And I want to be clear, not everything has to be Green Hill Zone colorful. If anything, I would prefer if we stopped having to see Green Hill Zone in every game since Sonic Generations in some way. In this game, there's literally 10 Green Hill Zones. 10. But the environments in this game just feel like they're trying to be something Sonic doesn't need to be. Like, nobody's asking for this kind of realism and understating from Sonic. And I think this only hurts the game in the long term. Any game, really. Because realistic graphics in games age like milk, especially if they're not groundbreaking. And I don't think anything in this game is ugly on like a technical level, specs-wise. I think it's just lacking a purpose, any sort of identity of its own, an art style. Something that sets it apart and makes it feel like it's connected to Sonic's world in any way. Because right now, it's not giving Sonic. It's giving Halo Reach, which is the straightest comparison I think I've ever made. And lastly, I don't even feel comfortable talking about this for too much because it makes me feel like I'm whining, but the pop-in in this game is really bad. Platforms will just appear out of nowhere, really unceremoniously. It's common for games to load assets in as you get closer to them. Like, that's just a given, but it's like things will just be a couple feet away from you and they just appear out of nowhere, and it's really jarring and feels like there's a lack of polish because of it. And I really don't have anything constructive to say because I don't know anything about coding, so it's not like I can offer a fix to it. I just kind of feel like I'm whining and complaining, but I guess that is what it is. But yeah, I'm really hoping that the patch for this ends up coming at some point, maybe during the DLC, and maybe when you're watching this, it'll have been fixed and it's not even a problem anymore. So here's to the future. Part 2. The story slaps, actually. It is good this time. The last decade or so of Sonic games have really had a tone problem when it comes to their stories. As someone who grew up with the Sonic Adventure era of games where the plot lines were really out there and they played it completely straight, Shadow has fucking alien blood, Silver is from the future where everything's on fire all the time, and Knuckles is the last of his species, burdened with guarding the Master Emerald, full of questions of who his entire race even were before him, with with nobody left to answer those questions. And while most of it is incredibly stupid, it's the perfect kind of stupid that becomes completely camp. These bisexual animals are going through it, honey, and I'm here for the ride. But starting in 2010 with Sonic Colors, things started to change. Sonic's large cast of characters that seemed to double with every new game began to really shrink down, almost exclusively following just Sonic and Tails the entire time. There would occasionally be cameos from other characters, but it was nowhere near the level it used to be. A detriment, in my opinion, as a Team Chaotix Kinney. And this was especially true when it came to who was playable. If they're not Sonic, or Sonic, you're not playing as them. The writing style also shifted too. Sonic became basically like Spider-Man, I guess, where every line was basically saying the word butt or calling Eggman bald or fat.
Hi, fatty.
Baldy nose hair
Baldy nose hair!
reverberates through my subconscious on the regular. Sonic would almost never show any emotion other than being happy and talking about chili dogs and gotta go fast, which is not even a thing I think Sonic even ever said until the Sonic memes took over the internet in like 2015. It became like a catchphrase that people who experience Sonic solely through Twitter think Sonic's supposed to say. It drives me fucking nuts. Sonic Forces is the biggest offender of this tone problem that I talked about. For instance, in this part, Sonic has been, quote, tortured for months. And then when we finally see him in said prison cell, he's just like, chili dogs. I fucking hate it. IDW Comics writer Ian Flynn was brought onto Sonic Frontiers to write the dialogue and tell the game's story, albeit on a very short leash, apparently, but let me tell you, it fucking slaps. Sonic has multiple moments where he is once again being his smartass little self, but the delivery of the lines by actor Roger Craig Smith and the dialogue itself throughout the whole game shows that this is just a front. Sonic is actually kind of scared, unsure of what is happening, and just trying to save face to make it through the events of the game with a smile. There are multiple lines, mostly when Sonic's idle and wandering around the open zone, that make this really clear to us. He doesn't want his friends to have to worry about anything or have to figure things out for themselves. Which isn't just a character flaw that Sonic needs to overcome, but it's also affecting his friends' lives as well. Tails, Amy, and Knuckles all have conversations with Sonic that make it clear they've been relying on him for a very long time, and he has this feeling like he needs to solve everyone's problems for them and take the burden onto himself. And it's hindering their growth as people and making them wonder what it is they really want from life. They're relying too much on him or focusing too much on their past troubles and aren't allowing themselves to explore the world on their own. And this realization has inspired a new search for purpose among the three of them. And it's really profound stuff for a Sonic game and a total breath of fresh air as a fan. Dr. Eggman also goes through a similar journey in this game too. His newest creation, the AI character Sage, brings up many questions throughout the game to Eggman of why he's so fixated on Sonic, why he doesn't work with him more, etc. And Eggman himself seems to be wondering these same things. We could see this in the egg logs that you can collect from Big's fishing minigames, which I loved, by the way, so simple and completely optional. Perfect way to include Big the Cat, in my opinion. A little Big goes a long way, no pun intended. This is where a lot of the lore of the game is too, and it's full of callbacks and references to pretty much every Sonic game ever. And during several of these logs, Eggman begins to grow very attached to Sage. He starts calling her she and her, which, like, okay, pronoun king, no blue hair required, no hair at all, apparently, Baldy McPronouns, you better work. And he begins to see her as his daughter, not just another mindless creation designed to kill. And when she sacrifices herself to save the world in the final battle with Sonic, Eggman mourns her death and goes out of his way to save her from her fate. Eggman tragic father storyline, give it to me! The quality of the storytelling here almost made me, like, uncomfortable because I was just so shocked at how good it was. I like nervously laughed at Sonic being so sincere because it's been decades since he's shown any other emotion other than running. It was so sick. Also, as an Amy Rose apologist, this game gave me everything I fucking need. She's finally found some sort of agency other than romantically liking Sonic. And it's clear she still loves him too. Like, they are endgame, period. But honestly, even the slightest amount of the depth they've given her in this game is a very exciting jumping off point for the future of her story. I also really appreciate how Knuckles was handled in this game. He's one of my favorite Sonic characters because he takes himself so seriously, and I just think he's adorable. adorable. I feel like a lot of the discourse online that I've seen about Knuckles these last few years is that he needs to be this hardened badass, and everyone is tired of him being a complete buffoon in every other representation he's had. I also just love the phrase discourse online about Knuckles. Like, of course there is. This is normal and not insane sounding. And I think that's kind of a tangent video on its own maybe, so I won't stay on this long, but I agree, I think he could benefit from not being so dumb all the time, but I think there's a balance. Like, Knuckles is not that smart. Let's not pretend he hasn't been this way from the beginning. From his inception in Sonic 3, he's been this easily tricked character because he's so focused on protecting the Master Emerald that his common sense gets away from him sometimes. And that's just a fact of his character. He's a punch first, talk never kind of guy. And I appreciate that this game sort of depicts him of still having that aspect of his personality, but it tones it down enough that we aren't seeing him as the dunce of the crew. It's no Sonic Boom, but Knuckles isn't fucking Batman either. Make him too cool and he's not Knuckles anymore. So I really loved him in this game. He's very introspective. It's a new side for him. I have a friend here now joining me for this video. Let's see how long that lasts until she wants to leave.
Do you like Sonic, Ruby? Do you like Sonic? Do you like Sonic? You like the movie? You like the movie, right? Okay. Alright. I don't know where that tongue's been.
When she was 9 weeks old, actually, she did have a stuffed Sonic that I gave her that she very quickly tore all the stuffing out and I had to take it away. So she does like Sonic. Maybe. Maybe she wants to kill Sonic. She's just like Eggman. Oh my gosh. Twins. I also want to reiterate just how much I love that they are referencing past Sonic games in this game. Like Eggman referencing Maria in one of his logs. Mamma mia, I love it. And I cannot forget to mention the lore. Bitch, the lore. The fact that we learned the origin of the Chaos Emeralds and that they're from space, which by the way, they look more delicious than ever in this game. Here's my flavor chart for each color. Please tell me yours in the comments or anywhere online, to be honest, I don't mind. Not to mention they were originally from this Chaos water creature species and they look identical to Chaos from Sonic Adventure. What does this mean? I need to know more. I have so many questions. I loved all of the flashbacks to this ancient Chaos civilization's history, and I kind of wish that they got to it a little bit faster, but like, I can't complain. By the end, we got it, so I don't care. And as stupid as the idea of an evil purple moon being the most evil force in Sonic's entire world is, like, the final boss sucks. It's a shoot 'em up that I did not even know existed, by the way, because I play the game on normal difficulty, and you can only access this part of the fight on hard mode, which is stupid. But anyway, as much as it's dumb and, like, not really explained very well where this being comes from, I kind of lived. It's the exact kind of random deity bullshit I loved about the early 2000s Sonic games. So for me, more or less, more of this, please. It feels weird to be only talking about the cyberspace levels 20 minutes into my video because literally the first thing that happens in this game is you get thrown into a Green Hill Zone boost level like something from Generations or Sonic Forces, but I'm talking about them now, so here we go. And this is really where the game kind of falls short for me the most. In an effort to please everyone possible, I guess, Sonic Team didn't fully commit to everything being open zone in this game. Instead, they included these cyberspace levels that play like any of the modern boost games from the last 10 years. And they even look like them too, which I will come back to in a minute. So there are two types of cyberspace levels, 2D ones and 3D ones. I like the 3D ones more, so I'm gonna start with those. I honestly think these are some of the most fun 3D Sonic levels I've played in years. So many of them have branching pathways to take that add replayability and make it fun to go back through them over and over when you're trying to get all the red rings, which I don't think do anything if you actually collect them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they serve any purpose. It would have been nice to spend them on different outfits for Sonic or something. Anything, really. But whatever. I think one of the biggest problems the last few Sonic games have had is that Sonic is just too fast for any sort of level design to feel meaningful and challenging. Nothing matters when you can just hold the boost button and careen through everything in your path. But in Frontiers, he can no longer boost through enemies, and when he's going at his boosted speed, it never feels like I'm missing the entire level. It's a comfortable amount of speed that reminds me a lot of Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, to be honest. It's fast, but not so fast that I question what's the purpose of playing any of this. The 3D cyberspace levels were sometimes so good that I kind of wish the entire game was just these, with new, unique level themes, enemies, etc. And it really made playing the 2D ones feel like such a chore to play. I would groan in disappointment whenever I finally made it to a cyberspace portal after like 10 minutes of exploring the open zone and it ended up being a 2D one. Sonic just feels off in these, like completely different from any of the other parts in the game. There's no momentum to any of his movements, and if there is on a technical level, then it feels awful. I really can't describe in words how it feels to control him here, but I just don't like it. And I've honestly really disliked shoving modern Sonic into 2D levels in every game outside of Unleashed, which did it first. There are a few instances where modern Sonic games have gotten 2D platforming pretty good, like the advanced games and Sonic Rush, but to be blunt, I don't want this, and I honestly don't even know how many people do. Unless it's a Sonic Mania situation or the classic games, I don't want Sonic to be a 2D platformer anymore. It's just never felt right enough in any recent game to justify such a focus on it all these years. And it really feels like they added it into this game because Sonic Team doesn't know what to do with Sonic, and they just kind of feel the need to try everything at once. The real setback of these cyberspace worlds, though, is that they're reusing assets from Sonic Generations, a game from 2011. There's nothing wrong with reusing assets in game development. It's a really common practice, but these ones in particular are just so tired and overdone. It's not special anymore to be back in Sky Sanctuary or City Escape or Green Hill Zone because we're here constantly, and it's the same each time as the game before it. The reason I guess that these all look like old levels from Sonic's past is because they're pulling from his memories and creating these worlds like AI. But like I said before, just because there's a reason for it in the story doesn't mean it's not lame. And it's like, okay, fine, reuse stuff from Generations. I don't care. But what gets me is why not reuse all of the levels from Generations? Why just like 4 of them? Use some from Sonic Forces, I don't care. Mash some of them up, give them some weird combination aesthetic. That would have been pretty cool. Reuse all the stuff you want, just make it more interesting and diverse. Anyway, I really hope they just don't do this again. An equivalent of Cyberspace Worlds, fine, I guess. I just want them to feel more fresh and new. Part 4, what's next for Sonic? What do we think, guys? I've given up on Chao Garden mobile game. It's never happening. While I was streaming my playthrough of the game and vocalizing the things I liked and didn't like, I was asked what my ideal Sonic game would actually be, what it would look like. And I think my answer is taking the idea of these open zones, but instead of having a few giant ones and having them feel very sandboxy, make a bunch half the size of the ones we have now and have those just be the levels. Imagine something like City Escape from Sonic Adventure 2, but there were multiple intertwining paths and ways to reach the goal. I also hope that going forward, they keep the combat system from this game and maybe tweak it a little bit, improve it. I was really pleasantly surprised at how much I liked it. I think despite all of its shortcomings, Frontiers is a really exciting look at what the future of Sonic can be. DLC has been announced at this point, so we do have a bit of an idea for what's coming for this installment in particular. This is the roadmap, and while most of it is stuff I don't think will get me to revisit the game much, the last part is very interesting to me. New story and playable characters. So help me God, if this is the step towards Sonic Adventure 3, I don't know what I'm gonna do. It's very exciting to think about. It's a damn good time to be a Sonic fan right now. Thank you all so much for watching. I can't believe it's been like 6 years since I've made a review video kind of like this, so I hope you enjoyed it. I have a Stream VOD archive channel now, so if you ever want to watch me play Sonic Frontiers or any other game, I play a bunch of stuff, please check that out. Please subscribe so I can get partnered on that. I'd really appreciate it. I will see you all on stream or in my next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye.